We bought a 50s bungalow a few years ago. The original owner had passed away, and we were the first people to live in it since. My daughter's bedroom was on the far side of the house from mine and was always colder than the rest of the house. We chalked it up to just poor insulation in that room. Every night I would hear her talking to someone. Just thought it was a baby sleep babbling. She was about 2 at the time. Then she started talking to someone in the daytime too. I asked her about it. She told me that it was the blue-faced mommy. The mommy wanted to play peekaboo with her all the time and wouldn't leave her alone. She said she would wake up in the middle of the night to play peekaboo. It honestly freaked me out. I talked about it with one of the older ladies in the neighborhood who knew the original family. Apparently their oldest daughter had suffocated herself in that house after giving birth to a stillborn child. Not sure how she suffocated herself. The neighbor didn't have a lot of details, and it happened in the early 70s. I am certain that she was the blue-faced mommy my daughter was talking about. A friend told me she had read about the best way to deal with these lingering spirits was to politely ask them to leave. So one night, when my girl was woken up, I went to her room and politely said, "Please, ma'am, your family has moved away. We need you to go now." And after that, nothing. I still get chills thinking about it. A few years ago, I asked my SO if he had ever seen a ghost. He got really uncomfortable and squirrely. Lots of hemming and hawing. Annoyed, I just said, "Just say yes or no. I won't judge you if you think you have seen a ghost." I'm a skeptic, and I figured that he just didn't want to sound rude or something. Turns out he was hesitant because he believes that he did see one, but it was while he was deployed on a mission in Middle East, and he was trying to think of how to really describe it without giving up any classified info. The story is this. He was in a spooky, vague Middle East when there was commotion from the soldiers watching the perimeter. Apparently, they could see a man about 100 yards away from the camp. He had appeared out of nowhere. No one saw him walking up. The man just standing there, not doing anything threatening. But since it was strange, a man in the middle of a war zone, they broke out all of their high-tech gear, if you could say, to see what was going on. They could see his face, his clothes, his height, but he looked bizarrely distorted and was giving off a weird heat signature. They have infrared jimmy jams and whatnot. It's the freaking military, not a piddling ghost hunting trope. He was not the temperature of a human being. It was the temperature of the air around him. They had no idea what was going on, and people were freaking out. At this point, I said some obvious stuff. Maybe it was a scarecrow or a dummy or a shadow, or the soldiers were just really tired and delirious, and their eyes were just playing tricks on them. Or maybe it was just a hologram weapon shaped like a human. His response: they called different people up to look at this man. It wasn't just a few soldiers who saw this. Dozens of people came to look, and everyone confirmed that it definitely was a person. Eventually, they decided to send out a team to go check this guy out. When they got to about 50 yards away, the man started walking. Only it didn't look like he was walking toward or away, only walking in place. They froze expecting an attack, but the man never got any closer. Me. So he was, moonwalking? Oh, a terrorist with some dance moves, so scary. His shaky response. It looked like it was trying to walk, But instead of moving like a regular person, its bones were breaking and splintering backwards and forwards at the joints. I can't think of a better way to describe this. Its head was jerking around like a puppet. When the convoy got a few yards closer, it disappeared entirely. The team hauled us back to camp. As soon as they returned, the man-thing reappeared in its spot. Everyone took turns watching it for an hour, until it disappeared for good. Didn't walk away, didn't fly or melt or explode. Just stood there for a long, long time. And then it vanished. Before moving to the United Kingdom in London, I lived in a small Eastern European country, which had fair share in violence, war, and misery in its history. Ever since I was young, I lived with my little cousin and my grandmother because of work-related circumstances. My mom was abroad. We have moved a lot when I was young. I lived a peaceful life as long as I could remember, at least until we moved to the suburbs, a few miles from a small city. We lived on a farm, secluded with at least a mile until the nearest houses. As the farm was very large, we had around 4 dogs at the time, which were always outside. Around 800 meters from our house, there was a very big old abandoned barn, which I recently found out was around 50 to 60 years ago. It had a family living there. The husband hung himself after shooting his wife and kids, with no apparent reason. Ever since, anyone who walks past that house can tell that they feel like they're being watched or followed the whole time. Me and my cousin went to kindergarten and school for a few years, meaning we had to pass the house every day. And to this day, we remember how scary it was to just pass this abandoned house, even though at the time, we didn't know its history, only that no one lived there for a very long time. One night I was getting ready to sleep. The moon was very bright with a clear blue sky. I stared through the window, from which I could see the old house. To my surprise, at the very top, from this tiny window, there was some sort of what looked like a candle lit. I got scared as no one lived there, and the house itself was old and scary for me and my cousin at the time. Actually, frankly, to any farmer around, it was. So that night I went to sleep. As a couple more nights passed, I was lying in bed and I couldn't fall asleep, just staring through my window from my bed. It was bright as the moon was full, and to this day I can't explain what happened that night and what I saw. While staring through the window, I saw 3 dark figures, like with hunchback or leaning forward quite a lot, not walking, but floating past my window. You can tell when someone is walking, as from their movement, but this was literal floating past my window. And the scariest part, that not only we lived miles away from other farmers, and it was late at night, but that we have 4 dogs outside, who not barked one single time. I got stone cold, and my heart dropped as I hid under the covers. I was scared to see that again, so I haven't looked through that window for weeks. After what happened, I told my grandmother and my mom years later. Both of them believed me, and only then, my grandmother told me what happened at that old barn. I will never forget it, as it is stuck deep inside. At that time, I was around 8 to 9 years old. But this is the most memorable thing from my childhood. My family is originally from Mexico. This all happened in my paternal grandparents' apartment in the early to mid 1970s. When I was about 1 or 2, my parents moved in with my grandparents temporarily. They had put my crib in my grandparents' room, and my parents stayed in a smaller room. While I don't remember this, my parents told me that I would scream at the top of my lungs whenever I was put down for a nap or for bedtime. They said I would point to the corner of the room and yelled out the words, "La Cha Cha." And no, it has nothing to do with the dance. In Spanish, Cha Cha is short for muchacha, which means young woman. They said this would also occur in the bathroom. I would point at something in the corner and yell "La Cha Cha," and then would kick and scream saying that she was going to get me. My cousin also had an experience, except she was a little older and ran out of my grandparents' bedroom once. When my uncle, her father, asked what was going on, she said that the man wouldn't let her go to sleep. My uncle, fearing that an intruder had broken in, checked everywhere. They were on the 8th floor, and the window was small with no balcony, so there was no way that anyone would be able to climb and just break in. He asked her where the man was, and she said in the corner. No one was there. The next day, she also ran out crying, saying the man wouldn't let her sleep again. My uncle had had it by then. They then didn't stay there for a long time. My grandmother had hung her laundry on the roof. This is very common in the large apartments in Mexico. And around dusk, it started raining. She asked my aunt, her daughter, to run up and get the clothes because she was making dinner. My aunt, who was about 15 at the time, ran up there and started taking the clothes down. She was by herself up there. Then she said she took down one of the sheets, and when she did, she saw something standing a few feet away from her. Since it was kind of dark and raining, and the roof was not well lit, she assumed that it was another tenant, so she said hello. The person was wearing a black cloak and had its back to her. The minute she said hello, the figure turned around and she froze. She said the hood was empty, except for 2 glowing red eyes staring at her. She dropped the laundry and closed her eyes, and when she opened them, the figure was gone. She then ran back down the stairs to the apartment in tears and all hysterical. It took a long time for my grandma to calm her down. At first, she thought someone had tried to attack her, but then my aunt told her what happened. Apparently, other tenants had reported seeing a familiar figure roaming the stairwells and the roof. Whether this thing is related to Cha Cha or the man who wouldn't let my cousin sleep, I don't know. All I know is that this place was really creepy, and I was finally glad when we moved away to another building. This apartment building was destroyed in a big earthquake in 1985, so it was a blessing they weren't still living there at the time. This experience didn't happen to me, but it occurred while I was around. This happened probably around the mid-90s. My parents, me, and my brother and sister went to Mexico to visit my father's parents. Author's note: this happened to my older brother, by the way. It was a small town or village in Mexico, I don't remember, called Guanajuato or something pronounced that way. Well, my grandparents allowed us to sleep in my aunt's old bedroom while they slept in a tiny room in the porch. My brother recalls waking up in the middle of the night, and there was a black figure sitting in the rocking chair. We slept on the bed together, my brothers and me, and my brother told me that he was scared senseless. The black figure sat there, he described it, with hand on chin, just staring into the darkness on my grandmother's old rocking chair. He then called out to the figure, "Hey," and it just turned to him quickly, and all he could do was close his eyes and hope that it would go away. He was seriously scared and promised me that this did happen. Then he opened his eyes again and looked around, and the figure was gone seconds after he witnessed it. Just gone, with no noise, no doors opening, and no footsteps. It just vanished. He still gets chills whenever he speaks about it. When I get the chance, I talk to him about this black figure in the shadows, sitting on my grandmother's rocking chair, staring into nothing, and ask him, maybe it was this, and maybe it was that. Grandma happened to walk into the room, or Grandpa was just checking on us maybe. I'm hoping that that's all that it was. But he continues to deny it. I still believe him, and I feel saddened for him to experience that, and all because everyone denies his belief but me. He asked my grandma and grandpa, and my dad about it, and I think they have yet to witness a figure sitting in the shadows. It still gives me creeps just thinking about that thing in the rocking chair, staring into nothing. Now, before you leave the video, I just wanted to say thanks for watching, and I really hope you enjoyed it. If you did enjoy this video, make sure to like, comment, and if you're new to this channel, make sure to subscribe. We're doing nothing but growing. I've got a lot, and I mean a lot, of content coming for October. We've got a lot of different stories and a lot of collabs that are going to be happening on my channel through the month of October. So get ready for that. If you would like to know more about all this stuff, make sure to check out the links in my description, my Twitter, Instagram, and if you would like to submit a story or something, my Gmail is in there as well, and I will gladly tell a subscriber story. But other than that, stay safe, stay scary, and I'll see you in the next one. Yeah, there's like a lot of collabs coming, so just be ready. Okay, love you, bye.